Again, I like drafters toolboxes. We can carry those around fairly easily. But they are toolboxes nonetheless, and we need to pull out the right tool when we need it. Sections is chapter 16. When we talk about sections, keep in mind there's a lot of different terms for this. We'll call them cuts, sections, cross sections, details. Many times these are all synonymous with a section cut. And what we really all want to know is, what is a section? So first I got a quick definition for you on what a section is, and then let's go look at some examples. Sectioning, what is it? It's the process of cutting an object open to reveal hidden features. The process of cutting an object open to reveal hidden features. Primarily what we are trying to do here is to get views of objects with object lines versus hidden lines, because object lines are much more descriptive. When we have objects that have parts that change internal to them, we will never see them with orthographic projection. Therefore, this technique has been developed where we can go and project the item at different locations to show this material that's inside. Now, keep in mind, when you are doing sectioning, nothing will change on your projection except the location of where you project from. We still use orthographic projection. You're at infinity, your lines of sight are parallel, they're perpendicular to the plane of projection. Same thing, orthographic projection. What we're really trying to do is remove hidden lines when we are describing the geometry of the object. Okay, let's look at a couple examples of what a section is. I'll go to figure 16.2. It's on page 761. This little object right here, it's compared and contrasted with standard orthographic projection versus sections. So here we have some object, it's kind of hollowed out, it's got a hole in one side and a hole in the bottom with a little boss on it. This is your standard orthographic projection here, where our front and top views, we get a good look at height, width, depth. We get this hole described quite adequately. We never really get to see this hole in its function though. And then also when we're looking at this minor hole, the one in the base here, again, we got kind of a little bit of confusion going on where this sticks up, it's filleted. In fact, this probably looks a lot like G5, I believe, how that works. Well, some confusion can be made here. So what we'll end up doing is we're going to come in and we're going to put a section line, or excuse me, a cutting plane line in this view, the top view. Now what that's going to show, this cutting plane line, is where the cut is taken. Then we project the front view just like normal, but we project it from the cutting plane line. So in essence, when we do this section, they're taking this guy right here, throwing it away. We are projecting from this line down. So that goes to there, that goes to there, and then these come down here. That gives us a good view of how this hole is really set up down here. Now keep in mind, is all the pertinent information from this view still here? Yeah, it's all still there, but now we're using object lines to describe it. So we're not degrading the drawing at all. We're actually helping the drawing by making it clearer. The top view is still drawn as if there's no section cut at all done. This is a standard top view. So in essence, it's a way for us to look interior and show objects. And I don't think it wouldn't take very long of looking at these two examples to say, yeah, the one on the right reads much better than the one on the left. So that's really what we're trying to do. There is one on 16.1. There's a whole bunch of sections that go on with this guy. Let's kind of look at this one. Go back a page. Start on one that's a little bit more complex. So here they're doing what's called an align section, where we have this part. Pretty much we can't see anything that sits in here. So their cutting plane line shoots here and then here. This is using the revolved convention that we just talked about. So what's going to happen when we look at the resulting view from this, we're going to project along this line for the bottom half, right here. And then this one's going to be swung to the quadrant location and then projected here to get rid of that false sense of a foreshortened surface. Now, once we do that, now we start seeing all these interior features, and our object lines are describing this inner plate with the holes through it that we got with different shoulders, because we got a counterbore hole on top, through hole in the middle, through hole on the bottom. And we see all those now nice object lines, they stand out versus all hidden lines. You can imagine what this thing would look like with hidden lines all through here and then these buried, and it'd be a mess. So in essence, cutting the object open to reveal interior features. There's lots of examples in this text, but those are just the two to kind of introduce it. Are there any questions so far? What's that? Yeah. It's a good example. You can spend a little bit more time on it if you don't have a specific question right now and ask it later. Now, keep in mind, when you do sections, we have two line types we need to bring in that we really haven't done to this point. We did one on one other one, where you did that wrench handle. Remember where we turned it and you had that elliptical shape of the handle where you attached that? Okay. That, in essence, was a section view using a short break line. And that is one of our sections. You're going to see it pop up. But most sections require two line types that we have to introduce. The first is a cutting plane line. We talked about that with the alphabet lines. It's again in this chapter. The second type of line is what's called a section line. Now, a section line has several different meanings, so we'll come back to that and discuss that in a little more detail. But let's start with the cutting plane line and where this occurs. So page 767. So here is the two ANSI-approved cutting plane lines here. Now the characteristics of these lines. One has a phantom line form, one has a hidden line form. Both are approved by ANSI and can be used by anybody who wants to. For us, we are going to use the one that looks like a phantom line, has the two breaks. Same breaks as we use for the phantom line. The reason we're going to use that one is probably 90% of industry uses that one. There are some people that go out and use the hidden 2-1, and that's just fine, as long as it's consistent through the drawing. So we'll use this one when we draw it. Now, the characteristics of it, the line weight should be very thick, so a 0.7 millimeter pencil or 0.031 inches in the computer. It's a very thick line. We want it to pop out. In fact, the only line that will be as thick as it on a drawing will be the border. Now, the other thing that goes on with this line is we have arrowheads that always sit at 90 degrees on the end. The arrows denote our line of sight. You are looking the same way the arrow is pointing. So in this example right here, what I'm doing is show you, this is the top of my head, and I'm looking that way. So that will give me the rotation that's going to go on with this cutting plane line. Now, this does not occur on the section itself. This occurs on the view adjacent to where the section view occurs. So it's showing the location of the cut. Think of this line as really a plane. So what it really is, when you look at a section, you're going to see this in an adjacent view. What you're looking at here is a plane on edge. Now, when I'm looking this way, I'm going to say this is in my top view. When I rotate for the front view, that's where my section occurs. This one occurs in adjacent view, tells me where it's at. Let's go look at a quick example of that so you see that. In fact, we can just stay on the same page. Right here, figure 1614. So here, notice they've given two examples, and this one's showing how the arrows work on it. This one is actually the correct one. So we have a front and a top view. The front view has been sectioned. The cutting plane line appears in the top view. Remember, this is a plane. So we're taking it in a knife and cutting right through here. This part will be thrown away. We'll rotate it into the front view for the view that we're going to provide. This is just showing the arrow pointing the wrong way, because this one would have to be rotated towards the top, right? Due to the line of sight. So cutting plane line. Now, when you're drawing cutting plane lines, you might want to make this note in your text. Here's the size of your arrowheads. We have two types of arrowheads on our drawing. We have our dimension arrowheads and our cutting plane line arrowheads. Those are pretty much the only two we have. The cutting plane line, again, we want this thing to really stand out, so we're going to make it twice as big as our dimension arrowheads. It should be 1/4 inch in length. To make a well-proportioned one, the width is always the length divided by 3. You folks remember the example we ran in class on how to make these? Yeah, we used a P line.
And you made it thicker.
Now, we don't have a specific layer to put your cutting plane line on. So you can create one if you wish. Most people are just going to use the border line and then change the line so that it's always a phantom. But some people, they like their own layer for it. So they might make a line layer called cutting plane line, set it up as a thick line with a phantom 2 line type. Let's go to the computer real quickly and let's just make sure we can draw one of these. So if you would, fire up CAD. And as David, you said, we are going to use a P line to create this. So I'm going to go and make my border line current. Okay, let's get some information first before we go and draw. So what we're going to do here, we're going to make an arrow, we're going to come down, cross, back, make another arrow. Our arrows are solid fill. Okay. So we know the length is 0.25. The width will be 1/3 of that. So what's our width going to be?
0.833333. Is that right?
0.83? Is my math correct? Okay. So that's our line. Now, when we come in to do this part, right now, there's really no set distance on where this will go. You'll see we use the stretch to kind of move it around and fit it with dimensions and all that stuff. For now, I think we ought to just make this segment around 1/2 inch long. We'll make this guy around 3 inches long, 0.5, and then come back with another arrowhead. Okay, so we're going to use a P line with the width option to go ahead and create this. I've actually got this line blocked into my library, so whenever I need a cutting plane line, I just insert it as a block and then stretch it accordingly. How are we going to do this? Let's go ahead and start the P line, so PL enter or choose your deal. And let's start up here on the left side, on the top tip of the arrowhead. So just click a point out on your screen. Now, since we are a P line, we have a width option, right? Okay, so I'm going to type width, or W for width. And it asks me what, on the command line down there, it's saying what's your starting width?
0.
We're on the tip of the arrow, so it's going to be 0. So you hit 0 and then enter, and then pay attention to the command line. It says, what is your ending width? Yep, 0.0833. Hit enter. Now, what you then want to do, if you just watch up here for a second. So we've set the width, and you can see the arrowhead going. Now, what you want to do is make sure you're locked in on your polar, and let's just go straight down, and then you type the distance that you want the arrow. The length is 1/4 inch. So I'm going to type 0.25 and hit enter, and I should now see that arrowhead pop up. Everybody with me? Raise your hands if you're behind and we'll get you caught up. Okay, we'll wait a moment, Cheryl. You can go up if you want. Okay, let me get you caught up here real quick. Now, it's your choice as a drafter. We're going to make all of this one P line. But some people decide, you know, we don't really want this. We're just going to make the arrowhead. And they just make the arrowhead and then attach it to another line through snaps. You can do that. But for us, what we're going to do is make the whole thing. Now, I can't have this width going at this. So we need to switch our width back after we make the arrowhead. So again, go into the width option. So W, enter. This time your ending and starting width are both 0. Okay, so just put 0 for starting width and 0 for ending width. Okay, now you can see my line has now gone back to a standard width line. The layer is controlling it. I'm going to come down and type 1/4 inch. That gives me my little tail there. Then let's go 3 inches horizontal.
Okay, I'm sorry, what was it before this 3 inch?
Just go 1/2 inch. So it's that 1/2 inch right here. So you set your width back to 0 at this point, and then we're going to go 1/2 inch down, 3 inches across. And then another 0.5 back up. I think I had a typo on my arrowhead. All right, so then we get ready to make our next arrowhead. Okay, now this time you're going backwards, right? You're starting with the fat part of the arrowhead and going to the tip. So again, go to width, W, enter. Start with 0.0833, end with 0, and make the length 1/4 inch. And you should end up with this line. You can terminate it once you finish your arrowhead. Now, we've now got the thickness right? The line weight is now 0.07 due to the layer it's sitting on. Our arrowheads are right. The only thing we have wrong is that this needs to be a Phantom 2 line type. So this is one, I don't create a whole new layer for this, but you're more than welcome to. In fact, folks, I highly discourage doing this on most things. On the home ribbon, you have this little properties section right up here. Okay. Now, if you change anything on here and run with it, it overrides your layer. So I kind of discourage using this because you forget about it, and then all of a sudden your lines are all on the viewport there, and none of them are plotting, you wonder why. Well, you accidentally had that set and you forgot to set it back. I just know, for me, cutting plane lines are one thing I always change the property on. But I only do it for like 2 or 3 things on my entire drawing status. So you want to be a little careful. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my line, come up here under line type, and put it to a phantom 2. Okay. Now, due to the properties of this, I can switch this to any layer I wish now, but it's always going to be a phantom line since I switched the individual property of it. So that's one thing you just got to be aware of. One other problem with this, whenever you have a P line and you use the width option, the layer no longer controls the width. Now, it will control the width as it comes down through, but we use the width option on the arrowheads. Okay, so they're going to be set at that size no matter what our scale is. And so you will want to take this line and scale it by your DSF whenever you use it.